into our first one, we have knotweed. This is a perennial plant that is native to Asia, and it was likely introduced to the United States during the 1800s without the essential insects and diseases that control it. So these were desired as ornamentals that eventually escaped cultivation and then eventually spread into wild places. They have roots that are also called rhizomes. They can grow as deep as 9 feet and out laterally up to 60 feet. Though these plants do die back to the ground each year with the first frost, in each spring, they do send up numerous early shoots along the whole length of these rhizomes. The rhizomes can also push their way under streets, grow into structures, and up through pavement. There's a report that a business in the United Kingdom spent over $600,000 just to replace the parking lot after it had extensive damage from these rhizomes. And one Welsh family even found the plant growing up through their living room floor as it pushed up through their floorboards. And this plant does have a high cost for control and management. And this is because any piece as small as an inch of stem material can produce a whole nother plant. And it's often found in riparian aquatic areas. So as you can imagine, that spreads rapidly throughout those areas. This is a really cool video showing you how quickly this plant can grow. So in the video, each second is a week in time. It's an 8-second video, so it's about 2 months, and it's a quick little cool time lapse that I thought would be interesting to show you. Alrighty. So getting into some control methods now. We're going to first start with the chemical controls. These are highly effective for knotweed. And these are the most successful because you can get lots of different coverage with these sprays, and glyphosate is a really big one here. So these are, again, the most common types of treatments. And treatments typically occur in the summer to early fall when the plants are actively growing. So one of them, again, is glyphosate. This is a non-selective herbicide. It's a group 9 EPSP synthase inhibitor. And basically what this means is that it causes the uh, amino acid production to effectively stop, which then affects protein synthesis, effectively halting the growth of the plant. Again, this is a non-selective herbicide, so anything that is sprayed with glyphosate, any plant material will die. You can also use imazapyr. This one is a group 2 ALS inhibitor. Basically, how this works is that it inhibits the ALS enzyme, effectively disrupting essential amino acid production that are required for growth and physiological function. You can also use triclopyr products. These are group 4 synthetic auxins that are applied with a surfactant, and essentially this forces the plant to grow itself to death. You can also use stem injections. These are less common because they are much more tedious. You have to inject each stem with a dose of around 5 milliliters. Whereas with the herbicide sprays, you can get broadcast sprays and treat larger areas more effectively. But these stem injections are really great if you're working within a sensitive area or you don't have the proper permitting to work within aquatic or riparian areas. So stem injection could work for, again, those smaller infestations. And with this, you're using undiluted glyphosate, and you want to have the concentration higher than 41%. And again, it's directly into the stem. You have to treat each stem with a dose of 5 milliliters per plant stem. So a experimental knotweed control method that you can use is covering. With this method, it's not very successful. It's very labor intensive, expensive, and it can also increase knotweed dispersal. So it's definitely something you can try. It's experimental. It can work best with smaller isolated patches, and you typically have to set this up and then install it. It's going to be a long-term process. So you want to make sure that the vegetation is all cleared out, so you have bare ground. You can use a high density polyethylene geomembrane cover. And you also want to make sure with this method that you're getting around the margins of the cover because the rhizomes can send out new shoots where the cover is not covering around that margin. So you will need to regularly check in and treat those shoots that are popping up near the margins just outside of the cover. Next, we're going to get into some biocontrol methods here. So within its native range, knotweed species are naturally kept in check by sap-sucking psyllids, diseases and fungal pathogens, um, environmental factors such as volcanoes, and competition with other vegetation that can create suboptimal growing conditions. So again, that sap-sucking psyllid, this is native to Japan, and it feeds on the sap within the leaves and the stems. This was approved for release within the United States for biocontrol in 2020 by the USDA, and it has since been utilized in a number of different states, including here in Washington and Oregon. I also mentioned there's a pathogen called a leaf spot fungus. This one is not really as viable as the sap-sucking psyllid. They are considering using this as a inoculant, essentially as a fungal mycelium liquid culture that could be then used to kind of dose plants, the knotweed plants, with that liquid culture because it is pretty successful in its native range at treating knotweed, as you can see in that picture there. There's also goats. You can see in that picture there, goats love to eat a lot of different types of vegetation. With goats, there can be challenges though, because if it's just a wide open area, you're not going to confirm that the goats will just target the knotweed specifically. So typically you have to have them in a closed off area where you want them to be eating the vegetation. But they can be very successful in really removing lots of vegetation quickly, especially if you have lots of goats. This is a really cool method. It's called electrothermal treatments for knotweed. So this is really commonly used in the United Kingdom, but it's not approved for use in the US yet. And essentially how this works is that a device that generates a current of around 5 to 8,000 volts of electricity is in that van there. You can see in the picture. And this is essentially a power module that then passes that current through the cord that is then attached to the lance that the operator uses. And then it passes through the lance into the stem and plant material. And what's really cool is that it simultaneously kills both the above ground and below ground portions of this plant at the same time. This is the only method that does that simultaneously. Also, there is then a earth spike, which is then inserted into the ground on the other side of the infestation, and this essentially closes the electrical circuit. And how this works is that it's the electricity that passes through the above ground and below ground portions of this plant. It effectively is boiling the water within the plants, and it causes irreversible and immediate damage to both structures. And with this method, results can vary. You can have a new infestation that's just developing that would be highly affected by this, or you could have a old growth knotweed stand, and you would probably need to increase the voltage or have multiple treatments for this to be more effective. And this is just a cool video showing you how this works. All right, so you can see that the operator had to treat each stem there, and kind of similar to the stem injection, that is the most viable method to get as much of that electricity through the plant as possible. Moving on now, our next experimental knotweed control method is a method called the fence girdling technique. This is a very simple, long-term, non-chemical control method that you can use. And essentially how you set it up, it is involved with clearing out an area. Well, first selecting an area that you know you have a knotweed infestation. You're then going to then clear away any vegetation that is in that area. You know, it could be old knotweed canes or other plants. You essentially want as close to bare ground or no vegetation as possible. You then are going to place a wire fence mesh that has approximately or exactly half-inch by half-inch openings over that desired area. And how this works is that as the rhizome network sends up new shoots each spring, they're going to get forced through those half-inch by half-inch openings. And as the stems reach a certain diameter, they're going to effectively girdle themselves in that mesh. And how this is going to work is that that's going to then kill off that growth. This is going to prevent the plant from producing the above ground growth that can then send nutrients back down to the rhizomes. So effectively, you're going to be starving out that rhizome network over time. And this can take up to 5 years to completely eradicate an infestation. And similar to that covering method, you're going to really want to secure this down because there's a lot of upward force as those stems grow upwards, and that can push your fencing. It can move it out of the way. So this is definitely something that you need to be checking on regularly. It's not like you can just set it up and then leave it and then forget about it for 5 years. You're going to have to go in, check those margins of the fence to see if any knotweed is growing up around that fence because it likely will. So it is a really cool method that you can use. Another long-term method there. And this is a really neat figure that I found from a paper talking about source sink relationships with knotweed. And this is really the bread and butter for chemical control for knotweed. It really highlights the best times to treat knotweed and also why this is the best time to treat knotweed with these source sink relationships. So if you're not familiar what a source or a sink is, I'll break it down for you really quick. So a source is a structure or structures for plants, and that are the essentially providing the energy for the rest of the plant. You can think about a mature leaf that is undergoing photosynthesis. You know, it's generating those sugars to then produce energy for the rest of the plant, right? So that would be a source. It's a source of energy for the plant. Whereas in contrast, a sink is a series of a structure or series of structures that are receiving the stored energy from that source. So you can think about a tuber that is developing or fruit that is developing. So essentially, it's receiving that energy from the source to grow. And the cool thing about plants too is that they can start as a sink and then become a source. So plants can switch back and forth between these two methods, right? And that's what's happening here with knotweed. So you can see in the spring here, or excuse me, in stage one, the rhizomes are very strong sources, right? There's no above ground plant material, and they have all of that stored energy in the rhizomes. So you wouldn't want to, spraying a foliar spray on the above ground portions of this plant is not going to do anything because all the energy is down in the rhizome. So during this time, you could do a pre-emergent and see how that could help you treat that knotweed. Because once the shoots start popping up, then they can then be affected by that herbicide. Whereas in stage two, the new growth is starting to pop up from those rhizomes. The rhizome is still kind of a pretty strong source. It has lots of stored energy, but it is, starting that transition from a source to a sink. This is a great time to apply any herbicides that disrupt the metabolism of growth. Um, and then in stage three, summer is happening with maximum growth. So you can really start to see the rhizome transitioning to a sink here. So the above ground portions are the new source, essentially, and then the sink is still happening in the rhizome. So you could spray here in June and July, but the most optimal time to treat knotweed utilizing these source sink relationships is in stage four. So anytime between August and November. And this is when the plants are flowering. You can see that the rhizome is a very strong sink. So if you treat it with a foliar spray, it's going to readily pull down that herbicide into the rhizomes, and you're going to get really good efficacy, really good results with that herbicide uptake. All right, so this is just another article that I found, and it just kind of highlights some really cool different control uh, findings that I thought were relevant. So increased herbicide dose does not improve knotweed control. Utilizing maximum herbicide coverage via a foliar spray with exploiting those rhizome source sink relationships that I was just talking about is the best way to get the most out of your herbicide. Knotweed rhizome networks are mostly concentrated within the first meter of the substrate. They can, like I was talking about earlier, extend pretty far, uh, down into the soil and laterally out, but they're mostly concentrated within that first meter of substrate. And knotweed is really successful at outcompeting other plants, especially early on in the season. And this is because they utilize very rapid growth development, which allows them to outcompete plants for space and resource acquisition. There's lots of many factors that can affect herbicide translocation, uptake, and efficacy in knotweed. And the biggest linkages is between those above ground and below ground tissues. Um, you can also have varying degrees of biomass that can also affect this depth and size of the rhizome network, source sink phenology, and yeah, all these combined can affect